Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a literal biological conflict that is happening right now, completely beneath your conscious awareness, that causes you to procrastinate. Seriously, get ready, because we are about to completely dismantle everything you thought you knew about willpower. To kick things off, I want you to ask yourself a question that honestly might hit a little too close to home. Why is it that the perfectly logical, super ambitious to-do list you confidently wrote out at 9 a.m. feels physically impossible to actually execute by 3 p.m.? Think about it. You haven't changed. The tasks haven't changed. So what actually broke down in your brain? Well, let's jump into part 1, the willpower myth, and why telling yourself to just do it almost always fails. For decades, mainstream psychology totally sold us on this one specific story. The old science told us willpower was a finite resource, right? Like a battery that drains the more you use it, a concept they called ego depletion. But get this, a massive 2016 replication study that spanned 23 different labs proved that this concept is essentially a scientific myth. Once researchers accounted for publication bias, the actual effect of willpower shrank to pretty much zero. Neuroscientist and addiction psychiatrist Dr. Judd Brewer actually hit the nail on the head here. He said, if your strategy for breaking a bad habit depends on a brain region that goes dark the moment life gets hard, you don't have a strategy, you have a wish. Which brings us perfectly to part 2, the prefrontal hijack. Let's look at your brain under stress. Okay, so let's look at the literal anatomy of this failure. In a brain that's gripped by a habit, like, say, chronic procrastination, your highly evolved prefrontal cortex, which is the rational planner, gets physically hijacked. Its ability to regulate your compulsive drives is significantly reduced, completely shifting your brain's balance from stop all the way over to go. You see, your prefrontal cortex is your executive function center. It's super rational. It makes those great plans at 9 a.m., but the catch is, it is incredibly sensitive. Think of it like a brilliant but easily exhausted executive who simply walks off the job the second things get stressful, tiring, or overwhelming. So the biological shutdown sequence literally goes like this. 1, a task feels overwhelming. 2, your amygdala, which is basically the brain's hyperactive alarm bell, triggers a full-on stress response. And 3, your prefrontal cortex is hijacked and just shuts down. So abandoning your work at 3 p.m., that isn't a moral failing. It's literally your brain executing a biological sequence to protect you from stress. All right, let's move to part 3, the anxiety-avoidance loop, or ancient reward-based learning. When that rational brain goes offline, an incredibly ancient survival mechanism immediately takes the wheel. And we have to zoom way, way out to realize just how deep this goes. Procrastination is actually built on a reward-based learning system that is so primitive, Nobel Prize-winning research mapped this exact same mechanism in sea slugs, organisms with only 20,000 neurons. I mean, if a sea slug can do it, you know for sure it's deeply hardwired into our biology. This immutable 3-step loop is exactly what drives the behavior. The trigger is that sudden feeling of anxiety or overwhelm. The behavior is avoidance, so doom scrolling on your phone, or maybe suddenly deciding your entire kitchen needs deep cleaning right this second. And the reward is the temporary relief from that task-related stress. This loop causes your dopamine neurons to fire, physically stamping the act of avoidance with a biological do this again tag. Now for part 4, the basal ganglia race, the biology of autopilot. Deep down in your brain, once that loop is stamped, it is handed straight over to a relentless autopilot, the basal ganglia. This deep brain region manages your automatic routines, and it operates using a literal biological race between 2 opposing pathways. There's a go signal that urges you to take action, like opening up a social media app, and a stop signal that tries to inhibit that action and keep you focused on your work. But here is where it gets crazy, because when it comes to bad habits, this race is completely rigged. Researchers at Duke University use these new labeling strategies to watch these signals happen in real time. They found that in a non-habitual brain, the stop signal usually fires first. But in a habitual wired brain, the go pathway ramps up and physically turns on first. It literally gets a head start. So just look at the cascading effects of this. Your urge to avoid the task is primed. The go pathway fires prematurely. Because the urge physically beats your rational mind to the punch, trying to stop the behavior once that trigger is pulled is scientifically destined to fail. I mean, your prefrontal cortex can't possibly win a race it didn't even know had started. So, on to part 5, rewiring the habit circuit, how we start hacking the reward system. If we literally cannot win a biological tug of war against our primal brain, how do we actually fix this? Well, we use neuroscience's three-gear antidote. This is Dr. Judd Brewer's framework for actively hacking the reward value of the habit itself. Map the loop, get disenchanted, and find the bigger, better offer. Step 1 is deceptively simple. Map the loop. For a few days, just observe yourself, note the trigger, note the behavior, and note the result. What you are highly likely to realize is that you aren't actually avoiding the spreadsheet or that email. No, you're avoiding the anxiety that the spreadsheet makes you feel. Anxiety is the hidden engine driving the entire procrastination habit. Then we have step 2, which is disenchantment. Honestly, this is where the magic happens. You have to force your brain to honestly evaluate the illusory reward of procrastination. The next time you scroll for 20 minutes just to avoid working, pause. Notice the yuck moment. Really feel the guilt, the mounting pressure, and notice the fact that your original anxiety has returned and it's actually louder than it was before. You are actively teaching your brain that the reward is fake. And finally, step 3, the bigger, better offer. You can't just leave a vacuum. Your brain desperately needs a reward. But instead of white-knuckling through the urge, offer your brain something better. You replace the shallow dopamine hit of avoidance with a much deeper, neurologically rewarding state. And that state is curiosity. The numbers on how effective this is are honestly staggering. By simply pausing and asking yourself, what does this urge to procrastinate feel like in my body right now? You shift from a reactive, oh no, to a much more observant, oh. Applied clinically, this simple shift activates the brain's reward circuits, leading to a massive 67% reduction in anxiety scores and a 40% reduction in craving-related habits. Your brain fundamentally prefers curiosity. It's just a way better deal. So, I want to leave you with this one final thought for today. We've looked at the hardware and the software of your brain. The next time you feel that familiar spike of panic and the intense urge to just run away from a task, instead of fighting it with willpower that we now know is basically bound to fail, what would happen if you just got curious?